Thank you.
We got a quorum to start. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. We have got one errant member that is present. Cassie's around somewhere, but but anyway,
Carol's not here, I can find her.
that's all right. In lieu of the prayer, we have had a couple of significant losses to our county family here in the past couple of weeks. Both from the Sheriff's Department, Trevor Peck and Arlene Bain, which many of you knew Arlene's been here forever. I'd like to just do a moment of silence in lieu of a prayer for those two. Thank you. Mr. O'Brien, you lead us in pledge.
Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Fire or other emergencies, there's 3 exits to the room, there, and there. Find near stairway and progress down through and clear the buildings and get away as far as possible. If you need assistance, please contact any one of us to help you out. Thank you. Silence your cell phones.
Thank you. Now, when you do a pledge of allegiance and my knee is hurting, you gotta wait for me to get on my feet.
I'm polite to everyone else.
We do a roll call, please.
Mr. Hanky,
Here.
Mrs. Fedler, Mr. Tall, Mr. Shaw, Mr. Hall,
Here.
Mr. Fisher,
Here.
Mr. Baker,
Here.
Mr. Nolan,
Here.
Mr. O'Brien, Mr. Hahn,
Here.
Mr. Campbell,
Here.
Mr. Skelly, Mr. Hogan, Mr. Wilson, Mrs. Clary, Mr. Wang, Mr. Roselle.
Here. I believe our public hearings are starting at 10:05, is that correct? So got the meeting minutes for the October 18th meeting, which I will consider accepted as mail unless there's any additions or corrections at this time. Does anyone have any additions or corrections? Being none, we will consider them accepted as mailed. Communications.
For communications from Family Services Association of Glens Falls, we received a copy of their October newsletter, and from the Washington County Republican Committee, we received the Election Commissioner Certification Form for the candidate for the Board of Elections Commissioner. That's all I have for communications.
Couldn't have made that go another 30 seconds, right? I'll declare it to be 10:05. Have a public hearing on introductory local law E of 2024. If the clerk would read the notice, please.
Public hearing concerning introductory local law E of 2024. The Board of Supervisors of Washington County will hold a public hearing in the Supervisor Chambers, Washington County Office Building B, Fort Edward, New York, on the 15th day of November, 2024, at 10:05 a.m. to consider the adoption of proposed introductory local law E of 2024, entitled a local law pursuant to Chapter 97-2011 of the laws of the state of New York and Section 3C of the General Municipal Law overriding tax levy limit for fiscal year 2025. Washington County's intent is to override the tax levy limit imposed by Chapter 97-2011 of the laws of the state of New York and Section 3C of the General Municipal Law for fiscal year 2025, and may adopt a budget requiring a tax levy that is greater than such tax levy limit of 2.49%. All persons interested in the subject matter of proposed introductory local law E of 2024 will be heard at that time and place concerning the same. By order of the Board of Supervisors dated October 22nd, 2024.
Thank you. I'll declare the public meeting open at 10:06. Is there Anyone who wishes to be heard on this topic? Any member of the public who wishes to make a statement on local law E of 2024? Anyone who wishes to be heard at this public hearing? Having called 3 times for comment and heard none, I will close the public hearing at 10:06. And we have a public hearing on the 2025 tentative budget. Clerk would read the notice for that, please.
Notice of public hearing on tentative budget. Notice is hereby given that the Board of Supervisors of the County of Washington will hold a public hearing in the Supervisors Chambers, Washington County Office Building B, Fort Edward, New York, at 10:05 a.m. on the 15th day of November, 2024, for the purpose of hearing all concerned persons regarding the tentative budget of said county for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2025. Pursuant to Section 359 of the county law, the maximum salaries that may be fixed and payable during said fiscal year to members of the Board of Supervisors, Chairman and Vice Chairman thereof, and Budget Officer respectively are hereby specified as follows. Members of the Board of Supervisors, 23,817. Chairman of the Board, 40,284. Vice Chairman of the Board, 29,709. Budget Officer, 42,853. Please take further notice that a copy of said 25 tentative budget is available on the county website or by contacting the Washington County Board of Supervisors. By order of the Board of Supervisors dated October 22nd, 2024.
Call this public hearing to order at 10:07. Anyone who wishes to be heard on this matter? Any member of the public who wishes to speak on the tentative budget for 2025? Is there any public hearing? Having called for comment 3 times and heard none, I will declare this public hearing closed at 10:08. And we'll move on to the committee reports, the audit report, audit committee. Moved by Supervisor Rozell, second. Fedler, Hall, Baker, O'Brien, Hahn, Clary, and Wang. Discussion. Under discussion, I'd move to amend this report. Just like I did last board meeting when I amended it to not pay the Hudson River, Black River bill to pull that out. That was good. I had my back up and we all got rolling on that just fine. We were going to tell the state that, and we weren't paying them. Unfortunately, our county process works extremely efficiently. And I don't think we'd adjourned yet. By the time they sent the check out and it left in the mail, we couldn't grab it. So they've been paid. I need to make an amendment to pay that particular vouchers just to cover Al for having paid it. So I also move. Second. All. Fedler, Paul, Clary, Wang, Rozell, and Nolan. I'm sorry, but we'll tell them that next year, I guess. Discussion on the amendment. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Moving back to the motion as amended. Need discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. One has to move the mortgage tax. Is that correct?
Up the mortgage tax
Right.
warrant.
Moved by Supervisor Campbell, second. Fedler, Hall, O'Brien, Hahn, Clary, and Nolan. Discussion. Under discussion, passing this, the state has not come back and approved it, but the numbers in here match the county clerks and match our treasurers, so I'm pretty confident of them. If the state comes back and changes something, we'll just do another motion to our resolution to amend it next month, but I think in the sake of expediency, we just pass it this time. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We got the equalization report. Moved by Supervisor Campbell, second. Fedler, Hall, O'Brien, Hahn, Clary, and Nolan. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, we got a whole herd of local laws to introduce. If the clerk would just read the titles, please.
Introductory local law F of 2024, County of Washington, New York, by Supervisors Wilson, Skelly, Fedler, Shaw, Roselle, Fisher, Baker, Wang, Tall. Title, a local law amending local law 4 of 1994, as amended by local law 7 of 2023, establishing a schedule of charges for Washington County Sewer District Number 1 for the discharge of sewage into the Washington County Sewer District Number 1 sewerage system and all sewers tributary thereto. Introductory local law G of 2024, introduced by Supervisors Wilson, Skelly, Fedler, Shaw, Roselle, Fisher, Baker, Wang, Tall. Local law providing for an amendment to local law number 3 of 1989 as amended by local law number 4 of 1989 as amended by local law number 7 of 2000 and subsequent amendments establishing a schedule of charges for the discharge of sewage, industrial waste, or other waste into the Washington County Sewer District Number 2 sewerage system and all sewers tributary thereto. Introductory local law H, introduced by Supervisors Wilson, Skelly, Fedler, Shaw, Roselle, Fisher, Baker, Wang, Tall. Local law establishing a rate schedule of charges for the discharge of sewage into the Washington County Sewer District Number 1 sewerage system and all sewers tributary thereto for the fiscal year 2025. Introductory local law I of 2024, introduced by Supervisors Wilson, Skelly, Fedler, Shaw, Roselle, Fisher, Baker, Wang, Tall. A local law establishing a rate schedule of charges for the discharge of sewage into the Washington County Sewer District Number 2 sewerage system and all sewers tributary thereto for the fiscal year 2025. Introductory local law J of 2024, introduced by Supervisors Campbell, Fedler, Shaw, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Roselle, Hall, Wilson, Fisher, Nolan. A local law providing for the salaries of the county administrator, county attorney, commissioner of social services, superintendent of public works, sheriff, county clerk, county treasurer, director of real property tax services, coroners, election commissioners, and personnel officer for calendar year 2025.
Thank you. Supervisor, privilege the floor. Anyone want privilege? Seeing none, we'll move on to the introduction of resolutions. I'll ask the clerk to read the resolves only, starting with 339 unless otherwise requested.
Resolution number 339 by Supervisors Campbell, Fedler, Shaw, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Wilson, Fisher, Nolan. Title, Supplemental Mortgage Tax Disbursement. Resolved that the Board of Supervisors issues the payment of the amounts listed below and authorize and direct the county treasurer to make payment of said amounts to the respective districts in accordance with the report. Grand total to be apportioned and distributed $20,026.21.
I believe we need a recess. Let's move on to the consideration of the resolutions, please.
Resolution number 306 by Supervisor Hogan, titled to relevy unpaid sewer district number 1 user fees.
Moved by Supervisor Hogan, second. Fedler, Tall, Hall, Fisher, Baker, Roselle, and Noland. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 307 by Supervisor Fisher, titled to relevy unpaid sewer district number 2 user fees.
Mr. Chairman, moving resolution number 307.
Supervisor Fisher, second. Fedler, Tall, Hall, Baker, Clary, and Noland. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 308 by Supervisor Hogan, titled to reassess unpaid water rents, Town of Kingsbury.
Supervisor Hogan, second. Fedler, Tall, Hall, Fisher, Baker, Clary, and Nolan. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 309 by Supervisor Baker, titled to reassess unpaid water rents, Town of Granville.
Chairman, moving resolution 309.
Supervisor Baker, second. Fedler, Tall, Hall, Fisher, O'Brien, Hahn, Clary, Roselle, and Noland. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 310 by Supervisor Fisher, titled to reassess unpaid water rents, Town of Fort Edward.
Chairman, moving resolution number 310.
Moved by Supervisor Fisher, second. Fedler, Tall, Hall, O'Brien, Han, Larry, and Nolan. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 311 by Supervisor Tall, title to reassess unpaid sewer number 1 and number 2 user fees, Town of Dresden.
Mr. Chairman, moving Resolution 311.
Supervisor Tall, second. Fedler, Hall, Fisher, O'Brien, Han, Clary, and Nolan. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 312 by Supervisor Wilson, title to reassess unpaid sewer number 1 and 2 user fees, Town of Putnam.
Mr. Chairman, moving resolution number 312.
O'Brien, second. Fedler, Tall, Hall, Fisher, Han, Clary, and Nolan. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 313 by Supervisor Clary, title to re-levy unpaid water rents, Town of Salem.
Chairman, moving resolution number 313.
Moved by Supervisor Clary, second. Fedler, Tall, Hall, Fisher, Han, Rozell, and Nolan. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 314 by Supervisors Wilson, Skelly, Fedler, Shaw, Tall, Rozell, Fisher, Baker, Wang, title set time and place for a public hearing on introductory local law F of 2024.
Kelly, second. Fedler, Tall, Hall, Fisher, Baker, Han, Clary, Wang, and Nolan. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 315 by Supervisors Wilson, Skelly, Fedler, Shaw, Tall, Rozell, Fisher, Baker, Wang, title set time and place for a public hearing on introductory local law G of 2024.
Moved by Supervisor Skelly, second. Fedler, Tall, Shaw, Hall, Fisher, Baker, O'Brien, Wang, and Nolan. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 316 by Supervisors Wilson, Skelly, Fedler, Shaw, Tall, Rozell, Fisher, Baker, Wang, title set time and place for a public hearing on introductory local law H of 2024.
Supervisor Skelly, second. Fedler, Tall, Hall, Fisher, Baker, Han, O'Brien, and Nolan. Favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 317 by Supervisors Wilson, Skelly, Fedler, Shaw, Tall, Rozell, Fisher, Baker, Wang, title set time and place for a public hearing on introductory local law I of 2024.
Supervisor Skelly, second. Fedler, Tall, Shaw, Hall, Fisher, Baker, O'Brien, Han, Wang, and Nolan. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 318 by Supervisors Campbell, Fedler, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Rozell, Hall, Wilson, Fisher, Nolan, titled to adopt introductory local law E of 2024.
Moving resolution number 318.
Supervisor Campbell, second. Fedler, Tall, Hall, Fisher, O'Brien, Han, Larry, and Nolan. Discussion. Mr. Campbell.
Yeah, I'm really not in favor of ever overriding the tax cap, but there's going to be situations where it's going to be important. It's nice to get it on the radar now so everyone can see it. And it wasn't necessary this year. I still don't think it's a bad idea. Where it's going to be necessary is when CHPE comes aboard, and not because we're trying to tax our residents more. It's a case where it's a large sum of money that's probably as big or bigger than what we can actually tax for. So our residents wouldn't get a reduction in taxes at that point. They would still get the average 2% increase. But it may be very important for the sustainability of the county due to the fact that Great Meadows closing purpose. So I'm not really in favor of ever overriding the actual tax cap if we can help it. But I think there will be points that it may be important, and that may be one of them. So keep that in mind.
Uh,
Yes, this is only for this year, right? You'd have to do it again in another year.
Correct.
So what is the reason for passing this even though we're not doing it?
Well, I think the reason for passing it is that your chairman is a belligerent son of a gun.
Well, besides that,
And
I mean, that, I don't need
Has
to vote.
always passed in this town, because there's, if you read the law carefully, there's a paragraph in there that says the only reason anyone would have to override the tax cap is because of the obscene mandates by the state. And I believe it sends a message back to the state. In fact, I've gotten comments on our local law every year. We've never overridden the tax cap, and I don't expect us to override the tax cap here. I consider this a way of standing on our hind legs and saying, hey, you know, we don't need to accept these mandates that you do it. We do have some home rule. And by the way, here's the only reason we'd ever have to raise taxes anyway.
Well,
So-
my thought, and I appreciate hearing yours, is that this is a practice run, so it makes it easier for us to override the tax cap. So personally, I'm going to vote no on this because I'm hoping that we never pass this resolution.
Tax cap's
Or
pretty-
have to,
I'm
I
sorry.
should say. But I respect what Brian has to say. I mean, I'm just saying that I don't think we should practice it.
I didn't mean to interrupt you there, Dan, I'm sorry. How long has tax cap been in? 12 years now? Argyle's passed it every single year. We haven't overridden the tax cap yet. Overriding tax cap is a whole different ballgame than passing this local law. This is just flag waving as far as I'm concerned. Mr. Hogan. Absolutely, that's what I think it is. I think that's, I think that level of, yeah, you have to do it every year. Someone, Mr. O'Barr.
Oh, I'd like to point out that Ryan has done half of this year's budget. In order to balance our budget, we pulled money from other places for more. Wasn't for that ability to take that money, that in future years is not going to be available to us because you can't keep on bleeding our general fund down or fund. We'll be having. Now, we'll have a number of funds. We won't be able to pull much from the fund balance next year. We're going to make up that $3 or $4 million we took from other sources next year. Yes, we can review the county's operations, figure out where we can streamline or cut expenses, but we have control over 35% of the county's budget. How much can you really cut? $7 million worth? After 12 years, I don't think so. I mean, that's talking about the control is in our highway department and our sheriff's department. Bob said mandated costs are already there. We've already been told our health insurance is going up by another exorbitant figure next year. So we're going to figure out how to handle that. If the state changes tier 6 retirement, we're going to get a bill for that too. There's a lot we don't have control over in managing our own budget. It's a shame that we don't. You look at Warren County, and Warren County is overriding the tax cap to the tune of 6.62%. Until after all the adjustments. But, you know, not pulling from fund balance, we'd be looking at this year. So I just want to, and it's not this year, and I hope it's not next year, but it's going to take an awful lot of good creative work to find that.
To return to both Dan and points here, if we were at the point of actually having to override the tax cap, I probably wouldn't be in favor of this. I'd probably say let's, send them a signal by cutting some program entirely. See how they like that. don't have control over our budget. You know, we sit here and flail our budget officer and flail ourselves and carry on, but we do not have control over our budget. The state has control over our budget, and I really. Mr. Rogan. Further discussion? This one is a roll call.
Mr. Hanky. Mrs. Fedler. Mr. Tall. Mr. Shaw.
Oh,
Hall.
Yes.
Mr. Fisher.
Yes.
Mr. Baker. Mr. Nolan.
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien.
Yes.
Mr. Hahn.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell. Mr. Skelly. Mr. Hogan. Clary. No. Mr. Wang. Mr. Rozell. Resolution is adopted, 3,198 yes, 1,445 no, 47 absent. Resolution number 319 by Supervisor Skelly, Shaw, Roselle, Hall, Fisher, Nolan, Wang, titled to amend and adopt Freedom of Information Law policy.
Moved by Supervisor Skelly, second. Fedler, Tall, Hall, Fisher, Wang, and Nolan. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 320 by Supervisor Skelly, Shaw, Roselle, Hall, Fisher, Nolan, Wang, titled to authorize chairman to sign internship affiliation agreement with SUNY Adirondack.
Supervisor Skelly, second. Fedler, Tall, Hall, Fisher, O'Brien, Hahn, Campbell, Clary, Wang, Nolan, and Roselle. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 321 by Supervisors Campbell, Fedler, Shaw, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Roselle, Hall, Wilson, Fisher, Nolan, title amend budget, information technology.
Resolution number 321.
Moved by Supervisor Campbell, second. Fedler, Tall, Hall, Fisher, O'Brien, Hahn, Clary, and Nolan. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 322 by Supervisors Campbell, Fedler, Shaw, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Roselle, Hall, Wilson, Fisher, Nolan, title amend budget, capital project 125, capital improvements for engineering reimbursable expenses.
Moving resolution number 322.
Supervisor Campbell, second. Fedler, Tall, Hall, Fisher, O'Brien, Clary, and Nolan. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 323 by Supervisors Campbell, Fedler, Shaw, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Roselle, Hall, Wilson, Fisher, Nolan, title amend budget, Sheriff for Governor's Traffic Safety Committee Services Program Award.
Moving 323.
Supervisor Campbell, second. Fedler, Tall, Hall, Fisher, O'Brien, Hahn, Clary, and Nolan. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 324 by Supervisors Campbell, Fedler, Shaw, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Roselle, Hall, Wilson, Fisher, Nolan, title amend budget, Public Health for Child Passenger Safety Grant.
Moving resolution 324.
Moved by Supervisor Campbell, second. Fedler, Tall, Hall, Fisher, O'Brien, Hahn, Clary, and Nolan. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 325 by Supervisors Campbell, Fedler, Shaw, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Roselle, Hall, Wilson, Fisher, Nolan, title amend budget, Public Health to recognize Early Intervention Administration Grant.
Moving 325.
Moved by Supervisor Campbell, second. Fedler, Tall, Hall, Fisher, O'Brien, Hahn, Clary, and Nolan. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 326 by Supervisors Campbell, Fedler, Shaw, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Rozell, Hall, Wilson, Fisher, Nolan, title, amend budget DSS for shelter arrears eviction forestallment program.
Moving resolution 326.
Supervisor Campbell, second. Fedler, Tall, Hall, Fisher, O'Brien, Hahn, Clary, and Noland. Discussion. Fairly paltry amount of money to throw at this sort of problem and then claim that you've solved it. I guess it's probably a good thing. It keeps people out of our dwindling number of motel rooms in the county, but I don't think that the amount of money that the state has provided for this is going to do a whole heck of a lot. But it's virtue signaling as far as I'm concerned. I will vote for it. Probably not a bad thing to do, but it's indicates the level of seriousness. They want us to take care of them, not the state to take care. Further discussion. Ms. Clary.
I remember correctly, we did get, like have received some money to help with, yeah.
Further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 327 by Supervisors Campbell, Fedler, Shaw, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Rozell, Hall, Wilson, Fisher, Nolan, title, amend budget mental health for 100% state aid.
Moving 327.
Moved by Supervisor Campbell, second. Fedler, Tall, Hall, Fisher, O'Brien, Hahn, Clary, and Noland. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 328 by Supervisors Campbell, Fedler, Shaw, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Rozell, Hall, Wilson, Fisher, Nolan, title, to amend County Road Fund for Lake Champlain Basin Program Grant.
Moving 328.
Moved by Supervisor Campbell, second. Fedler, Tall, Hall, Fisher, O'Brien, Hahn, Clary, and Noland. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 329 by Supervisors Campbell, Fedler, Shaw, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Rozell, Hall, Wilson, Fisher, Nolan, title, official newspaper designation, Democrat/Republican.
Moving 329.
By Supervisor, Supervisor Campbell, second. Fedler, Tall, Hall, Fisher, O'Brien, Clary, Rozell, and Noland. Discussion. Hartford doesn't want to say anything about this. No. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 330 by Supervisors Campbell, Fedler, Shaw, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Rozell, Hall, Wilson, Fisher, Nolan, title, official newspaper designation, Republican/Democrat.
Moving resolution 330.
Moved by Supervisor Campbell, second. Fedler, Tall, Hall, Fisher, O'Brien, Hahn, Clary, Rozell, and Noland. Discussion. Mr. Shaw.
I'm just trying to understand this. Is this, we're saying we're not picking either one, or are we, the lead one is the one that we're picking for that paper? How, I don't understand really. I guess what I'm trying to say, maybe I'll word it another way. Could we pick both those newspapers and say Democrat/Republican and streamline it, or is that not legal?
No,
That's what we did.
Huh?
That's what we did.
No, but you could do it all in one resolution. That's all I'm saying is
There was
it
a,
streamlines it and it doesn't designate one,
I
because
think-
one you're putting lead and the other one you're not. I'm just curious.
we were required to designate a paper for each of the two major parties. And as a result of 2 hours of debate a couple of years ago, we didn't designate, we put, one first / the other because, you know, other
That's
people-
how it's being worded,
So
is
that's
the-
how it's being worded.
One is the north,
Okay,
one
so
in
you
the
want, we
south.
are picking one as
We
being
gotta have
the
two.
lead.
That's
Okay.
why I have one lead and one.
I was only helping Mr. Hahn out because I knew this had to be talked about.
Softened his resolve.
Appreciate your help.
Yeah. Larry.
And if we want to go further, I get a kick out of it because we've got the Democrat lead up in the upper part of the county, and we have the other lead in the southern part of the county, which is mostly Democrat.
Without getting too deeply into a partisan debate here, I would point out that the Democrat that flogs me the worst comes from as far north in the county as you can possibly get, so.
There you go.
Further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 331 by Supervisors Campbell, Fedler, Shaw, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Rozell, Hall, Wilson, Fisher, Nolan, title, amend the 2025 tentative budget for taxes on county property.
Moving 331.
By Supervisor Campbell, second. Fedler, Tall, Hall, Fisher, Hahn, Clary, and Noland. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 332 by Supervisors Campbell, Fedler, Shaw, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Rozell, Hall, Wilson, Fisher, Nolan, title, resolution adopting the budget for fiscal year 2025, making appropriations for the conduct of county government.
Moving resolution number 332.
By Supervisor Campbell, second. Fedler, Tall, Hall, Fisher, Clary, and Noland. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Hanky,
Yes.
Mrs. Fedler, Mr. Tall,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
No,
Mr. Hall,
Yes.
Mr. Fisher,
Yes.
Mr. Baker,
Yes.
Mr. Nolan,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. Hahn,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Skelly, Mr. Hogan, Mrs. Clary,
Yes.
Mr. Wang, Mr. Rozell.
Yes.
The adopted 4,453 yes, 190 no, 47 absent. Resolution number 333 by Supervisors Campbell, Fedler, Shaw, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Rozell, Hall, Wilson, Fisher, Nolan, title to adopt the non-union grade schedule for 2025.
Moving resolution 333.
By Supervisor Campbell, second. Fedler, Tall, Hall, Fisher, O'Brien, Clary, and Noland. Discussion. Also roll call.
Mr. Henke,
Yes.
Mrs. Fedler, Mr. Tall, Mr. Shaw,
yes,
Mr. Hall,
Yes.
Mr. Fisher,
Yes.
Mr. Baker,
Yes.
Mr. Nolan,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. Hahn,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Skelly, Mr. Hogan, Mrs. Clary,
Yes.
Mr. Wang, Mr. Rozell. The resolution is adopted, 4,643 yes, 47 absent. Resolution number 334 by Supervisors Campbell, Fedler, Shaw, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Rozell, Hall, Wilson, Fisher, Nolan, title set time and place for a public hearing on introductory local law J of 2024.
Moving resolution 334.
Moved by Supervisor Campbell, second. Fedler, Tall, Hall, Fisher, O'Brien, Hahn, Clary, and Noland. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 335 by Supervisors Campbell, Fedler, Shaw, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Roselle, Hall, Wilson, Fisher, Nolan. Title: Establish 2025 salary schedule for exempt stipend, seasonal, and per diem employees.
Moving resolution 335.
Moved by Supervisor Campbell, second. Fedler, Tall, Hall, Fisher, O'Brien, Perry, and Noland. Discussion. This is also a roll call.
Mr. Hanky?
Yes.
Mrs. Fedler? Yes. Mr. Tall?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Fisher?
Yes.
Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Nolan?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Hahn? Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Skelly? Mr. Hogan? Mrs. Clary?
Yes.
Mr. Wang? And Mr. Rozell. The resolution is adopted, 4,643 yes, 47 absent. Resolution number 336 by Supervisors Hall, Shaw, Campbell, Fedler, Skelly, Wilson, Nolan. Title: Amend the Staffing Pattern, Youth Bureau.
Mr. Chairman, moving resolution number 336.
By Supervisor Hall, second. Fedler, Tall, Shaw, Fisher, O'Brien, Hahn, Campbell, and Noland. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 337 by Supervisors Campbell, Fedler, Shaw, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Hall, Wilson, Fisher, Nolan. Title: To authorize agreement with the Village of Fort Edward for construction work at the intersection of Prospect Street Avenue.
Moving 337.
Moved by Supervisor Campbell, second. Fedler, Tall, Hall, Fisher, O'Brien, Hahn, Clary, and Noland. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 338 by Supervisors Hall, Hogan, Shaw, Skelly. Title: To appoint election commissioner Republican.
Mr. Chairman, moving resolution number 338.
Supervisor Hall, second. Fedler, Tall, Shaw, Fisher, and Noland. Discussion. Ms. Clary.
As a member of the Board of Supervisors, I look ahead and think about, this past election, the president, there was no complaints, there was no audit, there was no one that contested the ballot. So it seems like it ran the way it should and the way. I thank both Jeff and Tom for that, for their efficiency and care that they gave this election. Going ahead, it looks like we're going to have another election in the next few months. That will cost the county money. We'll absorb those costs. We'll have to have two people in charge that are used to doing an election. That piece there is very important because that's an important part of our district and who serves the county. So looking ahead and thinking about that, that's a risk of bringing in a new person. That's all I have to say on that. Thank you.
In all respect to my female cohort down there on the end, no matter what we do, we're always going to be looking ahead. Someone could pass away tomorrow, as was mentioned to me one day when we were talking jokingly by the commissioner. So we always going to be looking ahead for those things, and we can't predict the future. And at some point in time, if we need to make a change, we need to make a change. So, I respect your comments, Sue. I just know that we need it something happen.
Comment? I am going to ask for a roll call on this one.
Mr. Hanky? Mrs. Fedler? Yes. Mr. Tall?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw? Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Fisher?
Yes.
Mr. Baker? Mr. Nolan?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien? Mr. Hahn?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell? Mr. Skelly? Mr. Hogan? Mrs. Clary?
No.
Mr. Wang, Mr. Rozell.
Yes.
The resolution is adopted, 4,425 yes, 218 no, and 47 absent. Resolution number 339 by Supervisors Campbell, Fedler, Shaw, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Hall, Wilson, Fisher, Nolan, title Supplemental Mortgage Tax Disbursements.
Moving 339.
Moved by Supervisor Campbell, second. Fedler, Hall, Fisher, O'Brien, Clary, and Noland. Discussion. The only discussion is, these numbers are what our county clerk has and they're what our treasurer has. The state has not gotten around to approving them yet. If they made some changes, we might have to do one. Wants to modify it by a little bit, but I feel pretty confident these numbers are right. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Resolutions. Pleasures, comments. Campbell.
Well, I'd really like to thank all the supervisors for getting the budget passed. It was a bigger challenge than we've seen probably 12. Challenging. Listening to all the comments when we were talking earlier in the meeting, I'd like to mention that actually what we put in for fund balance, the whole idea is to not spend that. And our department heads have been very good over the years. There's very few years we have spent it. Where we really lose is when sales tax drops and we're not expecting it. And that sometimes happens. And we don't know going forward where that's going to be. It looks like right now we are on target to be $1 million ahead this current year, which is $1 million ahead of what we actually budgeted. So I'm in hopes there's enough cushion so we don't lose on the sales tax end. But in all honesty, we should be working for efficiencies every day. We've mentioned before that we're going to try to go through carpool and figure out if there's a place where we don't need cars in certain actual departments and ways that we can streamline costs. It may be smarter to actually pay people to drive their own car than to pay maintenance for cars and buy cars. We're going to try to look at that thoroughly. And Deb Donahue does a great job with carpool. So her eyes along with ours will be really good in figuring that all out. But the budget truly is about 90% mandated. I mean, we can only control speeding things up and slowing things down and what we actually do. The ARPA money was a huge blessing in disguise for actually building these highway barns. And I don't know that we would want to borrow, especially at the rates they're at now, to ever do things like that. But at some point, we are going to have to put money towards the capital plan. The one time we had a great chance to do it, we went with a 0% tax increase, and that's kind of holding us back from building on our capital projects. But that's where we are and what we did. So, you can only look forward. You can't really look back. And going by what the county's doing around us, that's up to them. That's not up to us. And just because something may fit their county doesn't necessarily, it means it's going to fit ours. And I'm not sure that we can compete if they want to spend money like that. And I'm not sure we would want to. So just keep that in mind in our decisions throughout the year, things that we've already experienced and may experience in the future. And hopefully we'll make good decisions. But thank you, everyone. I really appreciate your help.
Noland.
I'd like to invite everyone to the Greenwich Lighted Tractor Parade. We have it every year. There's about 10,000 people that attend. This year, there's a new route. We're actually starting in the town near to Hannaford on Route 29. Coming down Route 29 into the village and onto Main Street, down to the end of Main Street near the Argyle Brewery. A great place to stop the parade. And we welcome everyone to attend. There'll be plenty of viewing areas. Restaurants, food trucks will be open as early as 2 o'clock. It's a good question. I think it's a week from this Saturday.
And are you doing a competition between the stores or the businesses? Costco's decked right out.
They have done a great job. They have done a great job. There isn't a competition.
No,
Maybe informal competition.
That's for the budget and Brian's statement. I think, we gotta recognize our department heads a lot more than we really do. Even though the state mandates a lot of stuff, we sat here and we're more or less advised and everything from the department heads on the savings. I think we recognize that, or those in the budget process. Thank you.
In Salem, we had our annual report at the historic Salem Community Courthouse. Okay, so that's our community center, and they honored about 15 people, and they told about the history of how it went from being a jail to the courthouse. It was worked with Cummings and Bruce Ferguson and Kay Tomasi. And what they did was they took on a big white elephant with the county's support and help. The county actually helped them to stay with operating costs for the first 3 years to support the transition. So all of this was talked about. And so I wanted to bring it back to the county to say, thank you for your vision. The courthouse is commendable. They do so many different things for the, for Salem and surrounding communities. And if that vision hadn't happened between Cummings and Kay Tomasi and Bruce Ferguson, we wouldn't have what we do without the amount of volunteers and the amount of people that keep it sustainable and give things back to the community. Just one part of that alone, which was the old sheriff's department building. They have a thrift shop there, and they've donated back over $400,000 back into the community from selling dollar pairs of pants and clothing and house goods. And they're volunteers, mostly older women. And you go in there and you listen to them. Most of them can't hear anything, but they're giggling and laughing and having a blast giving back to the community. So it serves in many, many ways, not just the amount of money given back, but also socialization and being proud of an organization they work with. So many, many years ago, I think Bruce was the impetus on some of that. And so we thank him for that. So.
I noticed we have been joined by one of our assemblymen in the back there, and I also know he's got another appointment to get to pretty forthwith. So I'd stop right now, Matt, if you want to say a few words. Matt Simpson.
Well, good morning, everyone. I was just coming from the naturalization ceremony, which is an incredible opportunity to welcome our new United States citizens. And so I'm glad that I have a few minutes to come over and say hello. From here, I'm heading to the Hudson Falls School for a meeting with the superintendent, which I know over the last year, stemming from the governor's budget last year, her executive proposal was set forth. You're aware of the proposed cuts to the foundation aid formula. And what that has resulted in, we were able to reinstate the funding. It was flat, which, you all know as supervisors, that means it's essentially a cut. We have to do more with less. And so there's been much discussion about the foundation aid formula, which really does need to be looked at in an equitable way to ensure that our children receive the same opportunity for education as they do anywhere else in New York State, which is what I'm pushing for. In December, we're expecting a report from the Rockefeller Center that is looking at potential changes to that formula. So that's one of the issues that is a priority of mine, because if we lose funding in our schools, in our rural school districts, which are already facing difficult decisions to make based on, the situation here in our rural parts of the state, that means our kids ultimately could see changes in what opportunities they have. I've been spending a lot of time meeting with the superintendents throughout Washington County, throughout my district, which I represent parts of 5 counties. And it's the same concern as to how to keep the program that they're offering in place and not be forced into situations of either significantly raising the school tax, because that's the only other option if that funding formula is changed in a negative way, or cutting opportunity and finding efficiencies. So it's a real priority of mine to ensure in this upcoming session and governor's budget that we see equitable changes to that. That's one issue. I think in the upcoming session, I think it's going to be a very difficult budget to bring together. We've seen late budgets, very contentious budgets over the last many years, probably as long as I can remember. But this year strikes me as a much more difficult budget because of we can't go back to taxpayers. We cannot put this burden. We need to find ways to cut the responsibility to taxpayers. They're just getting taxed out of existence. And we're seeing New York State lost a net of 178,000 people last year. That's on the heels of 3 other years of 200,000 plus people. So in 5 years, we could potentially see upwards 1 million people leaving New York State. We've seen the businesses that are experiencing difficulties in our region, and we really need to concentrate on economic development and growth. The answer isn't going back and raising taxes on the New York State taxpayers. It's not underfunding schools and resulting in a lesser opportunity situation with education. It's not forcing our nursing homes out of business and forcing to do much more with much less. We really need a concerted effort this year. So I think it's going to be a very tough budget. I did see an article a few weeks ago. The governor said that our revenues are up $2 billion. My opinion, every year going into the budget, there's always a report that says our revenues are up. But I bet there isn't a person here that hasn't felt the impact of having to do more with less. And it would be highly unlikely that the state is in a flush position to support all of the continuing programs that we are currently looking at. So I just wanted to stop in and say hello. Fortunately, I'm going to have the opportunity to represent you again in the next 2-year term. So I'm looking forward to it, and it's been a pleasure working with you all over the last 4 years. So I don't know if anybody has any questions, if the chairman would want to. This is great. I know how difficult the job. I mean, I sat in your seat. I was a town supervisor, county supervisor, and I get probably the most frequent question that I get asked is, what are we doing about state mandates? That's the difficult thing that happens when you're building your budget dependent upon support from a state budget, just as a town budget being predicated around what sources of revenues. And I've seen a major shift towards from New York State to just not participate in supporting county programs, resulting in more pressures on your budget. So I certainly understand the issue. It's a matter of, I think New York State's priorities are misplaced, and we're not addressing the core issues that we should. And we're expanding the responsibility of the state budget without having a source of revenue to support it. So that, to me, is a clear path to less support for many of our programs, which we depend on. And sadly to say, I've seen a lot of that in our Office of the Aging support from the state. I've seen it in our nursing home reimbursements and the support to nursing homes. Those are the populations that we need to focus on. And that, in my opinion, comes before all of the other stuff that we're dealing with. And, but there's differences of philosophies there. I'm one of 150, and I'm going to continue to work common ground where we can get things done and do the right thing for New York State.
I'm gonna let you get away entirely. Gotta ask
Oh,
you
here we
least-
go.
At least one question.
Okay.
Is there any chance in the world that there being any movement on bail reform in this particular legislation?
I'm going to say, don't let up. We need to continue the pressure. That's been a high priority of all of us in my conference to see changes. And there is no denying that it's having a negative impact in our communities. But the statistics that get put out by the state don't reflect the reality. If you change the rules and you say that going through a stop sign isn't a violation, then yeah, you can say less people are going through a stop sign. And that's what's happened in New York State. We've, in my opinion, personally, I think we've just made excuses for people acting badly, and we've contributed to the increase. And we need to hold people accountable. So we need to have rational discussions. I think our district attorneys need to be involved, all of our prosecutors, to bring everybody to the table and find common ground where we can fix this problem. Right now, it's been so polarized that we haven't seen changes yet.
Else?
Talk about assistance. I think one of the biggest impacts on a lot of years, all our costs gone up by 20, 30% to pave, and a lot of people,
Well, as you saw in the last executive budget, it was a proposed cut. And we were asking for a $200 million increase in CHIPS, which it certainly deserves. Our infrastructure is key to development and, economic growth in our communities. And we've had that funding reinstated. But again, I said it was a flat reinstatement, so essentially it was a cut. You're doing 20 or 30% less road work with the same money. I'm hoping that that isn't a source of focus to cut CHIPS funding. We're going to fight for an increase in funding. Our roads certainly, everybody is aware we need that investment. Great, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody have a great, happy Thanksgiving, and I'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming by, Matt. Thank you. Back to supervisor's comments. Mr. Baker.
Chairman, just quickly, Tuesday night, the 19th, the Pembroke Museum is introducing their new director from 6 to 8. And December 14th, Granville is going to show Greenwich tractor parade.
You mean mini tractor parade?
Minis and clean tractors, too, just not out of the field.
we understand that Greenwich is the mini tractor parade now.
Well, at least both towns start with grrr.
Hey, Mr. Shaw is next.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to explain myself. I didn't vote yes on the budget. And in fact, I'm the only one that didn't vote yes. And I didn't say anything in discussion because I didn't want to influence anyone. But as everybody knows, I worked through the whole budget process in committee, and was opposed to a lot of the increases that had been put in from Brian's original presentation. And so first of all, I want to thank Brian. I thought he did a very good job and he worked very hard at it. And I know you never make everybody happy. But with that being said, I feel very strong that we could spend less and get more. And the only way I can do anything about that is to voice my concern and vote no when I have an opportunity. But I do want to recognize how hard it is for him to do that. I've walked in his shoes, and I had a unanimous budget one year, and that was only because Mr. Half, who had voted no on every budget, when he voted yes on mine, and I asked him after the meeting why, and he said, I made a mistake. So maybe I made a mistake here today, but I was walking in his steps doing it.
Anybody else before I let Brian do it again? Mr. Skelly.
As I brought up at last month's meeting, our oldest resident, Dick McGuire,
So, last Sunday, we actually did a rededication of a Veterans Memorial that we have on our Hebron Highway campus. What was very interesting was, believe it or not, Hebron had a Supreme Court justice named Samuel Nelson, who was actually instrumental in the Dred Scott decision back in whatever year. And we had nearly 40 people there, which for Hebron, that's a huge number. So I really want to thank Matt Simpson actually came and attended and viewed our highway garage while he was there. And Carmen Bogle also came from Senator Adams's office. So we had a really good turnout, and we don't have many events like that ever. So it was just nice to see all the people that came out. So I just wanted to mention that.
I got a couple things. I was almost with Dan on this budget, and I agree. The rest of you have done quite a yeoman's job working on this. We've had some pretty contentious committee things. I personally am very upset that there's right back to the same spot we were when Brian and I got here. Things were falling apart, and it's taken us, a decade at least to get back to where we're starting to have some progress, and we saved money this year by putting nothing into our capital projects. I think that's a mistake, but it wasn't enough for me to vote no, Dan, although I know. I want to note with some interest that ever since Brian and I have been here, which is a long time, Whitehall has always had a real hesitant vote. It comes to Whitehall and they sit there for a minute, and they ponder, and then they vote. You did the same thing today, but Easton's catching it, so I wish you guys would, just. All right, now, something not quite as light. We lost a very significant citizen in Argyle, Jackie Hayes, who was our former administrator's wife. Kevin's wife had passed away. It was very strange for me to go to an election and vote and not see Jackie sitting there being an election inspector. She's been there ever since I remember. A real valuable member of the community, and she retired and didn't get through 2 years of retirement. So condolences to Kevin for that. You guys all get this alumni magazine. Can't find the cover of it. some of you might even read it. Those of you who did read it might have noted that Matt Cooper, our new clerk out here, is the featured alumni in here. And father was also an alumni of both places that. And I think we'd be really remiss if we didn't point out that Matt beat his father's GPA by 1/100th of a point. So I want that immortalized in the court record here for Matt's sake. And if you didn't read it, read it. It's really nice write-up on him. It's really an interesting thing. I wanted to compliment the way our social service system functions in Washington County. We discovered a young woman living in our cemetery. Just about froze up with this last, what's the thing, pretty much rescued by the church and put it into the housing and things. So our DSS, that is an absolute and actual rescue. Number 4, there is a burn ban in New York State until November 30th. So get the word out. I'm not sure how well it's spreading out, but I guarantee with the government, since the governor did it as an order, I guarantee there will be enforcement of it. And people are burning brush piles and things, they are going to get tickets. So keep your constituency safe and plus keep some of your buildings from burning down. We've had some real, issues, and Whitehall was one of them. I understand there was not going to be a Saskatch festival next year because this burned out the only Saskatch habitat in Whitehall. So next year you guys can come down to Thistle Day and not worry about that Saskatch business. They're all extinct now. For 5, I wished I could have been at the naturalization ceremony today. We had 19 people from 12 different countries. Even their citizenship over there. Next year, we have been pretty successful in getting the days to not line up with board meeting days. So you should all be able to go if you want to. Strongly encourage it. It is a magnificent ceremony. Thank you to the county administrator's office for the reception that we put on over there. And really appreciate it. Really had a lot of time. I was hoping my daughter was coming back. She was the national anthem for the naturalization ceremonies in Clinton County, and we had a hole down here, so I forced her to come down and do it for over here, but she's not back yet. I was going to force her to do it for you guys too. But final thing I'd say is I sent you all a request for advocacy things. Whether I'm chair or not, I think we should continue pretty effective program last year. I've asked you for specific things, specific bills and that you're interested in or interested in being against as much as possible is very important. There's also a lot of the philosophical things, we want to change bail reform. Well, that's good. We want more money in OFA. That's good. And we can get down there for some general advocacy sort of stuff like that. However, if we have specific bills you guys are interested in, we can target not just our people who are generally on our side anyway, but deal with them. And we have done that very successfully for a couple of things last year. We'll be going down again. I take down a very specific bulleted list on each issue. We'll pick out some issues, but I wish you guys would give me some suggestions. I don't want to, pull out of the air and say, yeah, Bob's going down to assembly again. I want to be taking down what you guys are interested in. Okay. I out personally this year to every one of you and to every department head. So we'll see what we get back. And I think that's all I've got. We are not adjourning today. We're recessing until December 20th. I'm sorry, Brian.
One more thing, you'd brought up ACC, and I don't know if anybody had seen it, but and I don't even know what group does it. Adirondack, SUNY Adirondack was named the #1 community college in New York State and actually 190 in the country. And it's based on the number of actual graduates that get degrees and the price point, what they have to pay for their education. So I thought it was quite significant. It's something we never hear about. We hear the good, the bad, and the indifferent, but never heard of Adirondack being #1 community college in the state. So I just thought I should point that out since you spurred my thought of it.
Yeah, well, you're right. That was something I should have done and I didn't. They were #1. I think 190 in the country is also pretty darn significant if you think about, you know, the number of community colleges there are in the United States to be that, pick out Little Adirondack Community College is, you know, being really significant. Thank you, Brian. I would have blown right over that. Anybody else? Mr. O'Brien.
I want to get back to Sasquatch. Need to know that they moved back to their permanent winter home in Hampton. So
Oh, actually, I can see some of the genetics there.
Back to the oldest looking guy here.
Hey, anybody else? Okay, we will recess until December 20th. Thank you.